here on Spaced Out Radio's YouTube channel. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, please do. We'd really appreciate the love. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. My personal handle is at The Cryptid Huntress, and shout out to Bumblefoot for our great intro music. All right, so we have an amazing guest for our first ever show on SOR tonight. My friend Barry Littleton is here. And for all of you listening in, I wanted to bring on a really good friend of mine for my first show. So don't forget that right after our show, After Hours has a great program set up for y'all tonight. So let's get to our guest. All right, Barry Littleton began having paranormal experiences at a young age. These experiences included telepathic awareness, seeing or feeling ghosts and various inorganic beings. These encounters and some of the entities themselves had a distinct extraterrestrial origin. That led him to a lifetime of research and exploration into the metaphysical and paranormal fields. And his website is barrylittleton.com. So I am going to bring up Barry Littleton. Hey, Barry.
Hey, hello, Jessica. How are you doing?
Oh my gosh, I am great. Yeah. So you are my first ever guest on Off the Trails. And I really wanted to have you on because you and I have the most amazing conversations together when it comes to Sasquatch and ETs. Yes. Right?
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Definitely. We do have great conversations and we exchange a lot of information. So I think that, brings a certain validity to it. So.
We do. And we talk pretty often too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, tonight, you and I have a lot of experience with, Sasquatch and ETs, and you have an amazing YouTube channel. And I can't get enough of your YouTube channel, by the way. And I hope that our audience will go and subscribe to Barry Littleton's YouTube channel tonight. And you will find so many videos that will just blow your mind. And speaking of which, Barry, you just dropped a video today that was really cool. And it has something to do with something that could be related to Sasquatch, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Tell me about it.
It's a new hominid that they found a few years ago called Homo naledi. And it was found in a cave system called the Rising Star Cave System in South Africa. And it appears that maybe these bodies got trapped in tar or something like that, or were drawn down there by, maybe they fell down there or were pulled down there by predators. Who knows? But there's a lot of skeletons down there. And I think they found a full one too. And it's this species of new hominid called Homo naledi. And what I said in that video, I want to make clear is I don't think this was Sasquatch, but I think we're looking at another piece of the puzzle. And it's important to examine the data. And there's a gentleman named Jeremy De Silva, anthropologist, that has a team that went to work on these Homo naledi. And he got an animation team to actually illustrate how this being would have walked. And
there you are.
Yeah, hey. Sorry. I'm sorry, internet's going in and out. But what I was saying is when you actually see the way that this Homo naledi walks in this animation, is it has something called hyperpronation of the knees, which is where the knees come to almost rub together in an inverse type of way. And it causes in humans a lot of walking problems and a lot of problems, all the way down to like having plantar feet and things like that. Yeah. So that's one way. And when you start seeing the way this thing is walking with this hyperpronation, it's the way Patty in Patterson-Gimlin walks. And what I did was I put in this video also an episode of Monster Quest, episode 5, season 1, where they were talking about the walk of the Patty, and they tried to put an athlete in all this equipment and try to have him walking like this. And due to the hyperpronation of the knees, he couldn't do it. And that was years and years ago. And this Homo naledi is, just recently being shown. So it's two different things there. And you've got something going on there that is unmistakable, that even proves if you're still tripping on if that video is real or not. So yeah, that guy He's got the greatest gorilla suit ever, and it just happened to get some sort of an athlete that had a hyperpronation knees that could just happen to walk fast like that.
Right.
Totally different here,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a big controversy all over ever since that video was made back in the 1960s, I believe. Always been questioned as to whether that was real. And this could be part of the key to solving that. And I did pull up some pictures here, Barry, of what you're talking about. And so you can see the knees right there and how they're kind of going in, like kind of bow-legged a little bit, right?
It's like what my parents used to say, they so knock-kneed that it caused a fire when they walk.
It looks painful, in my opinion. I mean,
yeah. Well, in humans, it leads us to a lot of walking problems and a lot of problems, especially if you're trying to do athletics. And what's interesting is this shows that this species of hominid was also accustomed to being in the trees and was capable of that anyway. So that may have been why that is. Whatever it is we're dealing with this Sasquatch, Patty has overcome the problem of walking with this pronation, this hyperpronation. Wow. And I think that's fascinating. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean,
and there I have a picture.
Look at that foot. Boy, that's a good suit, isn't it? Right. But a lot of those, you can see the knees even on that. And she's got a particular weird bulge at the end of the back of the calf also. I don't know what that is.
Look at that again. Yeah. Well, it's a muscle. It's got to be a muscle, right?
Probably. I mean,
Here, I'm gonna pull up another picture. That I was saying earlier, that looks like me when I wake up in the morning.
And I think this is where we're gonna go with this tonight. Jessica, is that what is this planet? Is it a laboratory where you've got all these different type of cryptids and hybrids that are being worked with, and they appear in our fossil record briefly, or they're seen briefly? I've done a video before and people laughed at me because there are a lot of these cryptids that jump into our field of awareness and jump away.
Yeah.
Like Spring-Hill Jack, or even the Chupacabra. A lot of them, the Mothman, they all jump into our perception for a moment and then take off, jump away. Right. What's up with that? And is it right now that really the dimensions are getting thinner? Is that what it is? Or there's a veil? Or what's happening to where all these cryptids are being seen all of a sudden? I mean, the Dogman, I did a video, Dogman Resurgence. You're seeing so many sightings of them. What's going on there? Why? But they talked about in the past, when you look at, I don't want to say this wrong, Saint Christopher, I think it was. Was it? Yeah, Saint Christopher, the dog-headed saint. He was supposed to be from a tribe of dog-headed saints. What's up with that? And you see, and I was told when I first started investigating the Dogman phenomenon, how often I was told, it was Native Americans told me that first, that when you have when the Dogman shows up, or areas that the Dogman is present, the Sasquatch evacuate. They don't stay. They leave.
Yeah.
They often warn the tribes of the Dogman. So I find that fascinating. Is that a demonic deal? And before I shut up, what's up with them being impervious to bullets? Just like the monkey, the devil monkey. And a lot of these cryptids that are shot at, they seem to be impervious to bullets, unless it's something like from a Lepura, one of those metal piercing bullets. I mean, why is that? Is it because their density is not the same as ours once they come here?
Yeah.
Or is it that they're manifested beings like we talked about last time? I do believe that, but I'll shut up now.
Yeah, no, Barry, you're
we're probably supposed to be.
You're hitting the nail on the head with all of that, Barry. And that's exactly what I wanted us to talk about tonight, because you and I have talked about everything on past shows about Sasquatch as a manifested being, to portals, and how, I personally believe that Bigfoots, Sasquatches are interdimensional beings. I think a lot of the cryptids are. But now, what does that even mean? And that's my question, is what does an interdimensional being mean? And now we're throwing in the whole idea of timelines and timeline shifts. And so that's something that's been on my radar lately, are timeline shifts, and how that correlates to the veil thinning. Okay. And what does that mean too? I mean, we have so many questions and so many angles that we can take on this. And I just wanted to get your take on everything, because, I have remote viewed, because I'm a remote viewer, and I have remote viewed Dogman, and the attack at the LBL up in Kentucky, where a family was allegedly attacked. And I really looked into the Dogman phenomenon, and it is real. This is something that really happens, and these are beings. And some of them are manifested beings, like you and I have discussed.
And there's different types of dogmen. There's like what, 6 types? And I think the one you were saying, the LBL, was like I don't want to say this wrong, but it was like a type 6 or something like that, the hyena type. Yeah.
It was a hyena type, yes.
And the last thing you did, I worry about you looking at some of those targets, because you're a real nice person, and some of that stuff you're looking at is awful dark.
It's
that group of Sasquatch that attacked that village and vacated it. And that had me thinking, okay, first of all, were those like the Patty type that just, were upset and were doing, or the type 2s, or what type was that was specifically doing that? And, because I didn't see a muzzle on those ones, or were they more like the caveman or the chipmunk, or the more like the chimpanzee type, or?
They were almost like, okay, this is going to sound wild, because you don't expect like a skunk ape type to be up in Alaska, but they had longer hair. But they were kind of like a Patty type, but more slender. And they were super tall, just really big, kind of lanky beings. They weren't dogmen, from what I could tell. And I believe, like, looking at this through a remote viewing aspect, I don't see a connection genetically with Bigfoot and Dogman. I think they're two totally separate types of beings.
Agreed.
So, but it sounded like maybe it was, a Dogman type of reaction to humans. But then I also just remote viewed the Dark Pyramid in Alaska, and I did a show on that last night, and it was showing that in that Alaska Triangle up there, in Alaska, wildlife is incredibly more violent against humans in that triangle and in that area than in other places. So what if that has something to do with it as well? There's something interesting going on in the land and the environment.
Well, at what point is it, since we're talking about cryptids and having fun with this, all right, at what point does this come, like these things being some type of sentinels? And when I say that, let's make reference to Lake Vostok. I don't know if I'm saying that one right, but what's called organism 47B, I think it is. Organism 47B that came out was the divers down there. Some of them some of them appeared to be like, they thought they were divers at first that were pulling the team down deeper, and then later this organism 47B was coming up on the divers, and it looked like a diver at first. The way I don't know, say cetaceans of that nature, octopus and squid, can morph their bodies like that. It comes
that sounds terrifying.
And it had like, I think, 9 tentacles or whatever. I've done a video over that, but anyway, it's organism 47B. Wow. But the way they described this, to me, it sounds like some type of a sentinel that was to stop them from getting any deeper into that trench. That's the way it's that lake. That's what it sounds like to me. So that's just little things. And then you think about the kraken of the ancient days, and I'll hear about that. Even when that Monster Quest, speaking to them, they sent down that on that squid to look at the giant squids, and they caught a really big one on there. So it makes
I've heard.
I had a friend, he passed away since, but he was with the Navy for a long time, and was the Air Force. He was on one of those aircraft carriers, and he said he's one of the people that was on the end that's supposed to look for people falling off or something. And he talked about how they were docked out at the Atlantic, and like he gave a formation, but he said he could see this other aircraft carrier, whatever it is, and there's only lights out there off the ship is all there is, he said. Otherwise it's pitch black. And he said he heard something, and he looks, and he sees this tentacle bust the side of that other aircraft carrier. He said it was just so huge. He said whatever it does was just go fast, and the top of it must have broke the surface. He said it terrified him to death. It was that big. So
wow. I can only imagine. That is pretty terrifying. Yeah, well, we have all of these really interesting sightings over the past, let's say 100 years, right? Really interesting sightings. Now, I'm wondering, is the veil just thinning? And I've been having a lot of conversations with people about this. And yes, I think that there is an aspect of the earth is changing its vibration. I feel like the vibration of the entire planet is rising. Okay. And I think that our consciousnesses are having to rise to meet it, and I think that this is a time where we are seeing a lot more cryptids and seeing things that aren't supposed to be there and things that we might not have been able to see before. But then I have to wonder, well, have we just kind of switched timelines, Barry? And you are a great person to talk about this too, because you've made a lot of videos on this, and you've even it looked like you had a device that could be like a time traveling device. Can you tell me about all that? Let's talk about it.
You watched that, huh?
I did. Oh yeah, I watched it.
Experience. Okay. I have I had experiences my whole life.
You're right. It's that time traveling device. It's
right now. We'll stop and catch right back up. So
the time travel device. It's glitching.
Yeah.
Right.
These experiences, one of them involved seeing what we would call a doppelganger, seeing myself.
Wow.
And I was about 7, 8 years old. I saw this brother, and he thought it was a relative at first, but this turns out being what I looked like when I was about 22, so this was one of those, it was so odd. And it's something that always stuck with me. Stuff like that you don't forget. Okay. I saw this guy standing on this bridge, and I tried to walk towards him, and he shook his hand up, said no. And it was weird because he was a stranger, and there's like no strange brothers in my neighborhood unless they was related to my family. You know what I'm saying? So it was just an interesting deal. Now, going forward with the device that you mentioned, it's called a hyperdimensional resonator. I had a really bad car accident in 2010, and during the time I was recovering, it was probably around late 2011, a friend of mine showed up and started talking about the Art Bell show, and you talked about the time travel on there sometime, and so I went back and watched it. And there's a gentleman by the name of Stephen Gibbs that was claiming he had a time device called a hyperdimensional resonator. And somehow I get this cat's number, and I give him a call. And I don't know why, just, those wild hairs. I recovered from catastrophic traumatic brain injury, so I was glad to be alive, and I was excited to exercise my intelligence still, So I gave the guy a call. I just wanted to hear more about this device. And the first thing he says to me is, I was wondering when I was going to hear from you again. Like, what? You never talked to me before. And he's like, oh, yes, I figured you took that other machine and you disappeared. You jumped timelines. I'm like, at first, I don't maybe write this guy off as a quack, I'm like, look, man, you've never talked to me before. And he says, yes, I have. He said, you sound a little older then, but it's I know inflections of people. I know inflections. And then he says this. He says, so have you seen your double yet? And that's when things got real strange. Okay.
Yeah.
They should have known that. And I still not going to say the guy's, whatever, but he sends me, I get this machine. He gives it to me for a discount. He sends it to me. And then he sends with it these manuals. I don't have them there. These manuals that were journals that he wrote for other time devices. And some of them were pretty advanced, to the point that I took them down to my engineering friend. And I said, look at these. What do you think about these? He said, where'd you get these? And, so some of them so I called him. I said, where did you get these diagrams? He goes, oh, from time travelers from the future, one of which. And he said other weird things like, the timeline I came from, there was no Twilight Zone show.
Wow.
He said, I sold one of those to Rod Serling. He said, he told me he was going back in time to make a show. And he said, and I was like, okay, yeah, right. And he says, have you ever watched the original? I said, yeah, quite a bit. He said, you ever noticed how many of them are about time travel? Oh,
wow.
Okay,
that's so crazy, because, when I think of going into the future and going back into the past, I'm a remote viewer. So like, I look at all this a little differently than the average person. But, you think about the movies where you get in a car and you drive somewhere, or you fly into like never land, into the past or into the future. You get in some sort of a device, like a hyperbaric chamber looking thing, and it takes you somewhere. But, now being on my spiritual journey the past couple of years, I'm learning about shifting my timelines, and striving towards my highest timeline. And, and now it's just it's a little more confusing for me in a few ways. But it's also a little simpler now because I'm like, well, maybe time travel is just changing timelines or jumping timelines. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, sorry, I may have took us again down the rabbit hole the other time. So I'm going to go back to what I should have been saying. Concerning the timeline changes, if you look at whatever these shifts are or edits, they come during times of extreme solar activity. And, we've been having that lately. And I know there's always been a timeline that I think certain entities are trying to push us into, that is that of nuclear war. And that timeline keeps coming up again and again, and it's come up again now, and it's terrifying. But nonetheless, this is so right now I think we're dealing with those time shifts. Like, for example, everybody's always talking about the Mandela effect, which is a time shift or time edit. All right, but there's certain things that not just the Bernstein Bears or C-3PO from Star Wars once having a silver leg, then it's gold, not stuff like that. But there's another one, like the time edit that I think happened during 9/11, and we discussed that.
That's right. I almost forgot about that.
How many people remember that actually Manhattan was in the middle of a hurricane? It was called Hurricane Aaron, and they had shut down, I think, even air traffic and things for a day or two. And for whatever reason on 9/11, it's just clear blue skies. Why? That's very odd. And when I mentioned that Hurricane Aaron, I've had people tell me, no, there wasn't. Well, go look at NOAA, look at the history, see it.
Now, it wasn't there also.
And they couldn't even remember it either. Actually,
yeah, I don't remember it.
Why is that? There's things like that we have to pay attention to. And people like you and I, and a lot of this beautiful audience you have that's been so gracious to me, thank you so much. They can detect these time edits. We're sensitive to it. Just like some of us can see a craft in the sky while other people are going, where? But 2 or 3 people in the crowd can see it while the others can't. It's that type of, I think,
Yeah. Well, and also, Barry, what about, wasn't there a pterosaur or some sort of, looked like it looked like a pterosaur that was flying past the World Trade Center before all that happened? Do you remember that? I think you're the one that might have pointed that out to me, actually.
Yeah, I sent that picture to you. Yeah, it was very interesting because that's something that a picture that went around and suddenly just died, just didn't nobody saw it again. You can look it up on Google, pterosaur or Territorn near 9/11. And, it's things like that. Once again, is that a time edit? It reminds me kind of like when I was at the SETI Ranch, Gillian had told me about this type of Territorn that's been seen flying around Mount Adams. And he claimed that it came out of those dimensional doors that lead into the mountain that you can see glowing at night. Yeah. So I don't know whether true or not, but when he's describing this thing to me, and he said that it'd been seen eating roadkill also by like officers or something. But the way it's describing it to me, what keeps coming, I pick up stuff, and I keep getting this flash of one of those blasted Autobot Dinobots. There's one of them that was like a pterodactyl. And I keep thinking, you have some type of a sentinel that's flying around that mountain, a cyborg that might still need to have some type of way to support its biological components, aka eating roadkill. Is that what we're dealing with? I mean, I don't know. It's just food for thought. And I think it's so interesting how many of these different large birds are being sighted. You've got the Territorns that look more like a bird of prey, but you've got the one you did the show about, the pterosaurs and the pterodactyls, the ones that have the diamond on their tails.
As a matter of fact, I actually brought a picture to show, I have a remote viewing show that I do on Fridays, and I just did one on pterosaurs. And this was from, like, I guess you could call it like a PowerPoint presentation kind of picture. but but this is what they look like. And let me tell you, these things have been spotted all over the country, all over North America, Central America, and South America. Okay. And you would be shocked at how many people have seen them. And when I put that on social media, I was just inundated in messages from people of who had firsthand accounts of these pterosaurs. They didn't know what they were seeing, and it was baffling to everyone, that had seen these things, because we're not supposed to see dinosaurs, flying reptiles right now. In
my uncle, he since passed away. In fact, for those that follow my story, it's the same uncle that passed away just before my car accident that I saw when I passed. I didn't think I had passed, but I was, I had this near-death experience. But he was a very interesting brother, and he had been involved in I think it's Vietnam, and he told me that he'd encountered some type of a dinosaur in the jungles there. He said it was stood up and spat E. coli at him, salmonella, but he claimed that this thing was walking upright anyway, and he said it was similar to like an iguanodon or something, but it was walking upright. And I said, you mean like the Jesus lizard that spreads out and runs across the water? He said, yeah, but this thing was big and it was different. He said it was ancient, it seemed like. And it makes you wonder, deep in the jungles, and the Congo is famous for seeing things like, I can't think of the name, Mobibbe. It's said to be a brontosaurus that's seen in the water most of the time. Yeah, it's in the Congo. Anybody listen to us can just Google Congo cryptids, like on YouTube, and all sorts of stuff will come up. I also try to do videos. The M. Yeah. A lot of different ones are seen, all the way down to people claiming to see triceratops in the jungles there. Mm-hmm. So I think that's fascinating. Are these portals, or are these just species that didn't die out like we think they did?
Yeah. Well, in my remote viewing data, it was saying that they had always been here. They had never gone anywhere. They were just here. We just could not see them, or we weren't seeing them. So now, does that lie within us, where we had something going on with our eyesight, or maybe we just weren't on the frequency of these creatures, and maybe we just are kind of meeting each other in some middle ground right now on our frequencies, and so we can see them now? I mean, I don't know. It's really odd, right?
Yeah, the whole thing's out. That's what I'm trying to always digest with the Sasquatch thing. Of all the types of them, how many of them are like supposedly the type 2s that you were describing too don't have these paranormal abilities? They're like more like apes in that way, or more like animals, put it like that. And it makes it, and then you've got these others, like when I experienced that mind speak at the Ascetti Ranch, I mean, look, it was strong. That thing overpowered me telepathically. And then it shut off that channel and I couldn't start it back up. I must have looked ridiculous. I was sitting at the edge of that bed going, and I couldn't get through, trying to be like Aquaman. I couldn't get through it all. But whatever that was, and I was listening to the show you did several weeks ago with the really cool guy. I don't think I've
Which really cool guy, Barry?
I can't remember his name, but it was a few weeks ago, but he made a comment. He said that when people get mind speak from Sasquatch, how do they know it's Sasquatch? And that's a good question. Like what happened to me, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was, but it gave me that feeling, that type of information with it. And why? If it was just some type of computer system. I mean, I don't know, but whatever it wasn't some damn ape. Oh, sorry, excuse me, some darn ape. That's for sure. And in that way, the telepathy was more advanced. Telethought, we'll call it, was more advanced the same way that I've gotten from star beings. Some of them can be overpowering with their telethought also.
Wow. Yeah, and there's such a wide range of Sasquatches and any kind of big hairy beings out there. There's some that I've remote viewed that were just out there looking for food, and they were a little bit violent because they were very territorial, and they were more of what I kept hearing, my data kept saying monkey brained, or like kind of just basic, where they weren't super intelligent or intellectual, I guess you could say. And then we have some that are way beyond humans, way just smarter and speak in telepathy and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're all telepathic, we all are, but this was they're on a different level than us. So yeah,
that's fascinating. Isn't that fascinating? And I still don't know really what they are. And I guess I could be more comfortable thinking that some of them are just simple animals, and we see how some of them terrorize people. But then you have these others that are I do believe there's some type of manifested being. And the more that we raise our vibration, the more we encroach into the natural habitats. I think the more they're manifesting near us, and the more they're becoming prevalent, the more they're being seen. It almost seems in some ways they're allowing themselves to be seen. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's very interesting,
Well, that takes us on. We can go on a whole other tangent on that, because what I believe is that this is helping to wake up humanity in a lot of ways, because every single person who has ever encountered a Bigfoot sighting, a Sasquatch sighting, a lizard man, or any type of cryptid, it jolted them into a whole new reality. And I like to say it raised their vibration and their frequency. Now, but it's also very traumatic. So it could really hurt people too, emotionally and mentally. It could be really hard on people. So, to the point to where we need like Bigfoot support groups and things like that, but we have to be there for each other, because it can be really scary and really crazy. But however, it's raising the consciousness of this planet, because it forces you to get outside of that box. It forces you to think outside of the box that we've been taught to live in. And, just to raise your consciousness and to expand your way of thinking about things. Yeah. Right, Barry?
Yeah. Even like when I had that one doing the owl sounds, I kind of do believe that they like tagged us. It made me feel funny. I mean, I don't have hair on my neck, but if I did, it would have stood up. You know what I mean? And it was so odd. And after that, it's like, man, did they do something to us? Did they tag us when they did that, to a point of where the others are aware of us? Or, I mean, I don't know. It was just very bizarre. The interactions that I never saw one, but they sure were messing with me, or whatever it was, and the fact I didn't see one, hey, I'm all right with that. Because I heard that when you see one, it does something to you. The people that see one, they're not the same anymore. And they say, like you got to tell me, I had a camera around my neck and I saw this thing was away for a second. I didn't take a picture. I didn't even think of it. I was just so stunned, because not even supposed to exist. So it's another thing. You're right. That is the same thing, like those that have been to that Isetti Ranch. And, I don't get into the political part of it. I've had some issues, but there's a healing factor out there. And I think there's that device inside of Mount Adams that actually scans soul life memories for life memories this lifetime. And it sends out some type of an orb that gets in people's biofield and accelerates their perception, pushes their perception forward. So many people that go out there have something happen to them that pushes their perception forward. Yours truly, included. So the first time I went, I got blown away. Spiritually, I was not a young cat, so I didn't think I was going to have, these these experiences that just stopped my world like that. But out there, that happened, and it's whatever is in that device. That the book Keys of Enoch by J.J. Hurtak. I've done a video over this. They have something in there that they call it's called OR station, and they describe it. It's in the glossary back there. OR station, and they have diagrams of it. This diamond type of Merkaba looking crystalline device and what it does. When I got so blown away the first year in 2016, I went out there and spoke at a SETI that when I got invited to speak in 2017, I did a professional hypnotic regression, 2 hours for specifically that place out there. I had to know what I was dealing with or went out there again. And, during that regression, I saw this device in the mountain. I had a feeling I'd been in the mountain the little I slept out there, like something was happening at night. And, when I wanted to meet. I wanted to meet John Vavinko. He's a remote viewer like you. And he had put out a video 2 years later after I'd already done this regression and everything and been there. about it's called the Ancient Aliens of the Seti Ranch, and his team saw that device inside the mountain. They almost described it as me. And in this book, if you look in the glossary of ore stations, you'll see pictures of this device that looks quite similar. No way that's a coincidence, right? So anyway, I'll shut up now. But I mean, it's little things like that. How many of these devices are still functioning on this planet? You know, when you get certain people that have the right DNA, blood type, or maybe it's soul life memories, whatever it is, we activate these things. You know, I used to think there's maybe there's one at Mount Shasta. I think there's one at Mount Kalagash in Tibet. And I'm wondering how many of these are around. Perhaps that Alaskan pyramid you were in remote viewing.
Yeah, could be.
The one that's supposed to be upside down somewhere near Puerto Rico. It's supposed to be
Wait a second. That sounds familiar because that's what we were remote viewed yesterday. It was that the Dark Pyramid in Alaska, and it had a pyramid that was kind of upside down too. It was like a Merkaba. Yeah. So well, hey, Barry, we have a question from Mr. Eon. What animal hides the best? What is the evolution of concealment? I'm wondering if they're referring to Bigfoot and Sasquatch.
I would have to give it to Sasquatch, and I'll tell you why. Because one is, before I went out there to SETI in 2016, I had just done a video over invisibility techniques. That's something I practiced when I was younger. You know, you've got both the ninja sects that practice that, and also it deals with studying the eye. How does the eye work? You know, like people don't realize that people have a line of sight. Then we look up so much and down so much unless they've been trained. And also peripheral is in black and white. A lot of people, that's why you could catch off on spirits in your peripheral. You don't think it's black and white, but it actually is. Anyway, I was talking about those, and I went out there and I got smoked with my own techniques. I couldn't see that thing. It was, you know, and I think not just that they can camouflage themselves with what that hair, some of the Sasquatch hair that's been found and reported, it's got these translucent color to it, translucent to light green, which means they would be able to phase in like the predator with camouflage or foliage easily. And in that way, go back to like what's said about Sasquatch in Europe, they have something called the Green Man. And the Green Man is like something that, you know, goes back to being part of the plant community, the tree community. Yeah. That takes me back to what Tom Powell blew me away with that day. He's saying that they live in trees. I was like, you mean like
let's see, Barry, you back? There you are.
You mean they have nuts in the bottom of trees, or they leave a boreal on them? He's like, no, that they can.
They're just a part of the tree, huh?
Change themselves into trees, they can merge with them, and sometimes when they shapeshift to look like tree stumps. And when I said that on a video, I got so many responses for that. You know, people saying that something like that had happened to them. You know, anyway, sorry.
Wow. No, that's wild. Now, I wonder if their hair being like that could make them purposely blur. You know, when people try to take a picture or, you know, cloaking, for instance. I think that my first experience with a Bigfoot was, it might have been cloaked. I think that I know for a fact something ran up behind me and knocked my legs out from underneath me, and there was nothing there. Okay. But I absolutely felt an energy run up behind me. So I think that could have been a cloaked Bigfoot, Barry. So
right. You remember the two videos I had showed you that of the one that cloaked when I was out there trying to take pictures of that cabin, and you could see it looking down. And it wasn't pterodactyl. I mean, but that thing, it looked almost cloaked like the predator. You could kind of see through it, or it was like reflecting the foliage. And just real quick, this is the deal. I was out at that ranch. I tried to do a gifting in the back of this place I was at where all this activity was happening. And then these things started happening with these apples, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And whatever this was watching me, watching all these people out there, and watching these robins come out, eat only the red apples that I was putting out, red and green apples out, like these gifting. These robins were eating only the red apples. But whatever this thing was, it was only moving the green ones and taking the green ones. So it was watching everything. I couldn't figure out, how in the heck am I getting beat? How I was watching everybody, everything. I was creeping hard. I was creeping. And this thing was creeping on me. Yeah.
Wait, you were lurking? Were you lurking?
answer this question. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I think that's part of it is their camouflage ability due to their translucent hair and something of that nature.
Well, that's a good answer. Yeah. Well, let's see. What do you think about the time travelers, Barry? And I was listening to a video with a caller on Art Bell show back in the day, and this guy was saying that he was from 2036, right? I am really fascinated with this time travel and this timeline jumping topic. So, what do you know about this guy? And do you believe this? Do you believe that was a real time traveler?
I was listening that night when I was listening. I listened to him every night, and I listened to when he would do these Art Bell would do these time traveler nights where only he would take calls on the wild card line from people that were claimed to be time. He tried to screen out a lot of the freaks and lunatics that might call in. But you've got this guy from 2037 that called in on 2 different occasions he did this. And it was just fascinating what he was saying as a vehicle he had and some of the things he was saying, kind of like how, and it wasn't John Teeter. John Teeter did not call in on Art Bell. That's not where that originated at. And John Teeter is the one that put CERN on the map. If he hadn't said that, he said CERN would one day discover time travel. And that just made CERN blow up. And everybody thought CERN was destroy the world, yada, yada. News, folks. CERN is not the first, what we used to call cyclotron that has been in existence. Look up the thing that's called the cosmotron. The cosmotron was done in the 60s. It's one of those 2. There's other ones. So, that's a point where we need to really more look at what type of exotic particles are they getting for a millisecond when they do these that can have all type of different applications beyond the Higgs bison, far beyond that. Going back to what these time travelers, for me, I had this experience with this. Okay, here it goes. These Nordic guys. I've had to eat crow on that because I always said they all look like Fabio, but I hadn't realized I had encountered these people. Anyway.
Hey, that's what they look like.
And maybe Christy Brinkley, vacation. I'm looking for the red Ferrari.
Well, anyway, that's a good way to describe it because everybody knows what you're talking about.
All Pleiadians look like that, right? We never hear about the ones that look like the Aboriginals. Anyway, these individuals, though, on a serious note, these individuals were in a ship that appeared to have windows on the outside of it. And none of the craft that I've been on board have windows because they're organic. Okay, there may be a screen or something, but they're not windows. So these are different compartments, I think, on board this craft. And the one I was in had these Nordic guys, one that I met later on at an antique shop. But I'm think that they were something I stole from Star Trek, a temporal commission. That's what I think there's some type of officers that are monitoring the timelines and trying to stop maybe some of these time jumps we're getting. And people and whatever species are trying to move us to this negative timelines. I think maybe they're dealing with something with that. Now, can I prove that? No. But these guys had these boxes, these metal boxes, these tight blue outfits on. I mean, like Christopher Reeve's Superbad tight.
Yeah.
But they've got these metal boxes with these like wires that come to on the top and the back to the point of where the seats they were in were low enough that they wouldn't hit that metal. And these guys look like they didn't look like identical twins, but they look a little almost more than fraternal twins. It was very odd.
Right?
I don't know what happens, but that's and one of them communicated with me, but I'm convinced that these are individuals that are manipulating the timelines and part of this temporal war thing that's going on, and what somebody said something to me at one of the conferences, I can't remember which one, but they came up to me, they said, you said that those Nordic guys weren't bad, they didn't feel negative or nothing. I said, no, but they look so similar. I said, yeah. He said, maybe something happens in the future, because that's what I'll say. They felt like what I call them also charters. And because one of these individuals was my first charter, and a charter is something I call, because a lot of us that have had lifetime experiences, every 7 years, one of these, what appears to be a humanoid, will come out of a crowd when you're somewhere, normally a bus station, a library, or airport. They'll come out of the crowd and they'll just talk to you for a minute. And they say something just super heavy that makes you resonate and go, whoa, and it's so, it almost puts you in a fringe, whoa, it's so heavy. And then they just go slip back into the crowd. You don't know where they came from, who they were. But that's something I've encountered every 7 years, one of these humanoids. And the only way I can describe them is there's nothing about them that's so different that you would say, hey, are you from Andromeda or something like that? But they do have this energy that pushes you. Not like somebody with ADHD, not like that, but like a very advanced push. Like they're just more advanced than us. And when I say that, it makes me think, like, one of them I met was a stronger telepath than me and came through the shields I tried to throw up on her. Okay. And it makes me wonder, they felt like people from the future, like I'd say maybe a couple of thousand years if we don't destroy ourselves. Mm-hmm. What will humans be like before we start changing this body into the next evolution? Makes you wonder, you know what I mean?
It does.
These charters are. When I first mentioned that on this show, I got emails about that. People came forward. That's happened to me. So it's amazing how often this happens every 7 years to lifetime experiencers, if you're sensitive enough to feel the energy.
Wow. That it's making me think right now, if we can send people into the future and into the past, I mean, we have the power. Someone has the power to change the direction of this world at any time, with just those little things like the Mandela effect, where we've got the logos of, Ford trucks have a curly Q in the F now, and things like that. Do you think that that's just little breadcrumbs of someone letting us know that time travel is real?
Well, in the private sector, if you look at the private sector, time technology in the private sector that doesn't get talked about a lot, things like even what Dr. Ron Mallett from the University of Connecticut was doing with his circulating light beams. That is one of the time sciences, circulating light beams used for time travel. Okay. That's it's one of the time sciences. So stuff like that we don't hear a lot about. And there's something else, and I think this caught your attention today. You sent me a message, you messaged you like it's one of my Patreon videos.
Yeah.
Project Channy and superluminal communications, and they can do propagation of information is actually sending information backwards through time. So if they can do that, and they're technologically can do that, it doesn't take much to try to start sending stuff back to somebody like Hitler. Hey, do this, do that. Yeah. See what I mean? There's stuff going on here, and just in the private sector, and people don't pay attention to that because it's not in the home yet, and they're not seeing it in the home. Look at the medical industry, what they're doing with the MRIs and things that have to do with time, dealing with time. It's very serious. We don't have to go so far as, no offense to the secret space program people, but we didn't have to go that far. We can look at what is in our eyes, and we can actually research. Yeah. India probably has the most advanced scientifically time technology in the world. We don't hear about the Digi Hills of India. There's a lot of stuff going on there. So, it is what it is. But I think for us to be more aware of how we have humans that can be manipulating the timelines, as well as other beings, the amount of beings that don't want us to be custodians of this planet anymore. There's a whole lot ready to come in here and take over. We gotta wake up. This is very serious times for humanity. Very serious. And I'll shut up now.
Wow. No, don't shut up, please. Yeah. Well, we have a few more minutes, Barry. And I just, what I wanted to do tonight was talk about Sasquatch and the cryptids and the timeline shifts and how that could be related in some way, because all this has been blowing my mind. And I know that I just went public with my research last year when I met you at Camp Disclosure here in Georgia, Barry. That's where you and I met. We've been friends ever since. And You blow my mind with all the knowledge that you have of so much stuff.
Oh, it's just the internet. Everybody's smart on the internet. It's easy. Everybody meets me in person, they're probably disappointed because I don't walk around going,
no, you're just as cool.
I don't talk like that. So
no, Barry, I've met you in person. You're pretty awesome in person.
You too, you know, and I'll be honest, I was a little intimidated by your audience, because one is your whole team. I met some of your team members. You all are field investigators. That's real. I don't even like camping. You know what I mean? So I mean that's that's real serious, I think. And also is that not necessarily the people you know, but the Bigfoot community, the Sasquatch community, man, they're brutal on each other. You know, like things in Paris, Texas, where they had that habitation where they were catching the Sasquatch in the mirrors that were through cameras that were pointed towards the forest, but they're seeing them on the mirrors in the back and catching them like that. That was a nice deal they were doing. But you know, when people, other quote unquote Sasquatch hunters, found out what these people were doing, they went out there and sabotaged it, doing a bunch of hoaxes and stuff. Why?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And so then those people don't release the real information, you know, that to anybody. Kind of like our friend Matt. Matt has some of the most wonderful footage I've ever seen. Seriously. And he can't release it. It's like, what? You know, that sucks that's the world we live in. Like right now, even space. Why aren't they telling us what the Webb's telescope is seeing when it's seeing in it's like the Trappist solar system that I showed you that I was talking about, you know, that has all those, you know, that's another one of these time skips, Jessica. I remember when that discovery came out years ago. It's been like 8 years ago. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting. And somehow it just went away and I forgot all about it. You know, and now the Webb telescope is looking that way. What are they seeing? They're not, it's been classified. How are you going to classify space? It's like classifying magnetism or classifying the wind. What, you know? Yeah. It makes sense. It's really
it's probably just like in something I was watching today. It might have been one of your videos, or I think it was maybe on Art Bell, talking to the time traveler. He said, you know, in one timeline, President Kennedy was not shot, and he actually survived, or he wasn't shot at all, and he exposed the fact that there are ETs on Earth. And the massive, you know, amount of people around the planet couldn't handle it, and it caused total chaos and destruction. So they had to go to a different timeline. You know, that wasn't the timeline. They had to go back and change it because it caused so much destruction. So interesting stuff, right? It one little thing could change the entire course of the world, because you know the masses have just not been ready for all this disclosure yet, perhaps. I mean, you know, you got to think. I feel like I live on a different timeline than half of the people that I know. Okay. You know, and that's on my everyday life.
When I was younger, I saw different timelines. I've seen things. You know, one of the timelines I saw were these massive craft, about maybe, I don't know, a dozen or a couple, materializing just for a minute or so over major cities, blacking stuff out, and people realizing that's it, we're not alone. And then it's too quick for anyone to do anything about it, but for the whole world not to notice it. You know what I mean? So things like that is kind of like maybe like in Star Trek First Contact, I like that show, when the Vulcans came and it's like, man, it changed everything. You know, so it's very interesting. Something like that. That's one timeline, maybe as possible as the nuclear war. And which one of these are we going to move to? Are we going to go to? We got to try to make it a positive one and try to stay in tune with the divine field. The divine field is real. You know, I've done a lot of work and people become so interested in what I've done with crossing over earthbound spirits that I do through a hypnosis. And it, you know, I didn't want to even talk about it. And I wound up having to do this workshop, and then all these people wanted me to give it to them remotely. And I started like freaking out, which I can't do remotely. I found that out now. I've done it several times now. So I'm going to offer that to people and to the people in that workshop. They've been very patient with me, but I didn't think that it would even work remotely, but it does. But right now, as I told you before, the earthbound spirits are just as numerous as the living on this planet. Another problem. Why are so many souls not crossing over? And you've got these people that you and I know, I mean, maybe not well, I didn't know so personally, but I mean, they're very popular people that have like 80,000 followers telling people, oh, don't go into the light. When you die, don't go to the light. It's a trick. And they haven't died. They're not even mediums, but they're telling people that, and then it's putting this doubt in people's minds. And then when the light comes, when they die, they run from it. And that is enough to get you stuck here as an earth-bound spirit. And when I say that, I've worked with over 80 of them, close to 100 I've crossed over now, and they all say the same thing consistently. It's dark here. It's horrible. I ran from the light, or I got away from it. I thought I was getting cheated, or I thought it was hell. I've done some bad things, and if I went into it, maybe I'm going to burn. So stuff like that.
That's terrifying.
I mean, that's things that are conscious right now, along with addictions, love of this life that stop us from crossing over. I mean, it's so much easier to get stuck here than I thought. You know what I mean? Yeah, shut up.
It is. Hey, no, Barry, listen, we've got to wrap it up. You've got about 30 seconds to tell everybody where they can find you, because we've run out of time.
YouTube, check me out on YouTube, Barry Littleton. Please hit the playlist, because a lot of it won't show up. And I'm on Patreon. Most of my work has been done in video. YouTube or Patreon, Barry Littleton. I don't even have a cool handle.
All right, Barry. Hey,
website's kind of in work always. I don't do a lot on there. So.
Well, Barry, thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm going to have you back soon, okay? And I will absolutely be talking to you very soon, okay, Barry? You have a good night. Thank you. All right, everybody. Barry is awesome. So don't forget that right after this show, hit refresh, and you guys can join the crew on After Hours, as they're going to take you guys on an incredible journey for the next 3 hours. And yes, I'm going to be there too in the chat, most likely. And tomorrow night, on Off the Trails, my guest is Connor Flynn of Bigfoot Anon, and we are going to get to the legend of Bigfoot in the South. I can't wait to see y'all there. But for now, I am the cryptid huntress, Jessica Jones, and I am headed off the trail. So I will be seeing you guys next, I guess, tomorrow. I'll see y'all then. Thank y'all for giving me such a wonderful first show, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.